An inbox of 400 leads that aren't getting talked to is less helpful and less profitable for the community than an inbox of 50 leads who are getting nurtured and talked to. So I think a lot of it is, get all the marketing out there, get all the leads and get all the stuff. But then we overlook, okay, what are we actually doing now that we have all those leads in our inbox?
Welcome back to the Multifamily Marketers Podcast, the show where we break down real-world marketing strategies for driving occupancy and boosting brand visibility. I'm your host, Josh Grillo, co-founder here at Resident 360, and I'm here with our co-host and lease-up legend, Caroline Mills. Caroline, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Thank you for having me.
Today, we are zeroing in on what happens after someone inquires about your property or someone reaches out to your property. So most teams, they focus on getting leads, but how you nurture them really makes all the difference. We're going to be talking about automation, follow-up best practices, and building relationships that actually lead to leases. Caroline, I know you know a lot about this topic. Are you ready to dive into it?
I am. Let's get into it.
All right. So let's start from the top. Let's talk about lead nurturing. So why is it such an overlooked part of the leasing strategy? You would think it would be like primary, would be the main thing to be focusing on, but why is it so overlooked?
I think it can be so overlooked, especially from us marketers as a standpoint, is we focus on getting the leads. And while you do need to get leads, and that's great, what you do with them is vitally important, even more important. We can send you all the leads in the world, but if you aren't nurturing them, then it doesn't make a difference. An inbox of 400 leads that aren't getting talked to is less helpful and less profitable for the community than an inbox of 50 leads who are getting nurtured and talked to. So I think a lot of it is, get all the marketing out there, get all the leads and get all the stuff. But then we overlook, okay, what are we actually doing now that we have all those leads in our inbox? Not the people who just walk in for a tour, but are in there just trying to get more information and ask questions.
Well, can you walk us through what happens when a lead isn't nurtured properly? Let's just say I am looking for a 2-bedroom apartment, and let's say I go to a property website, fill out a form of some sort. Maybe it's a schedule a tour form, right? I'm kind of interested in this 2-bedroom. I schedule a tour, and that obviously goes through and creates a lead within the guest card system, more than likely, within the property management system. But what happens if I'm not nurtured properly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all understand this at some aspect in our lives. We get frustrated. We move on. We live in a day and age where we are moving so quickly, and we are used to getting things instantaneously now. Like, I don't know about you, but now when I do shipping, because of Amazon or other services where you're used to getting your package in 2 days or less, now if you see it's going to take a week to get your package, what the heck? I want this quicker. I want this now. We all get used to it. Especially in technology-driven worlds, we're used to clicking a button and something happens. We're used to calling something and it goes through immediately. So we all move on very quickly. There have been a few studies out there that show how fast we're moving and how fast our prospects are moving as renters. And people are expecting emails and responses right away or within 24 hours. There is a lot out there for prospects to choose from that if they don't hear from you and they do from the next guy, they're just going to keep moving and going. They're not going to wait and follow up over and over again if they're not getting.
Well, that's what I would do. I mean, if I filled out a form and I didn't get a response back within, probably within the day, I would have more than likely have moved on in my search and reached out to a few other communities that I was interested in. Okay, so let's talk more about this lead nurture and diving a little deeper into it and building a lead nurture system. So what tools or platforms do you recommend for automating follow-up?
Yeah, there's some good ones out there. And I think look at the size of your team and the digital capability of your team and what works best for your community. Email marketing is one, I love. I love a good drip campaign or follow-ups and making things automated and easier for your team. There's AI assistants out there that now respond as robots back to your prospects. And there's some really good ones to where you wouldn't even know that you're talking with a robot or with an AI agent. or, whether that means maybe that's not in your budget, but just how you're going to tackle that as a team and how you're going to work within your team together to make sure that these are being pushed back to the top of your inbox. There's some kind of reminder within your CRM telling you to follow up again, or what works best for your community. There's a lot of great tools out there to help cut down on workload, make things more automated, and lighten some of the load of your leasing staff.
Well, what would a good email or text message drip campaign look like? Or should you combine and do both?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Especially think of your demographic, as we have some younger generations entering the apartment industry and looking at homes, they are going to be a lot more likely to text over email and call. And so absolutely try it. I think try both for your community, see what works best for your demographic and your property. I think combining them is a fantastic idea. What your most ideal or maybe a drip campaign would look like, especially if you're looking from a lead nurturing standpoint, is hitting hard in those first few days. Like we were just mentioning, you're moving so quickly and you've got so much going on. I may have reached out to 20 apartment communities in the first day. Maybe now I've narrowed it down to 10, but I forget who I saw on the first day. Well, now I'm getting a follow-up only 2 days later. That's right. Those are the people I loved with quartz countertops, whatever it is. And then I'm like, okay, let me talk with my partner. Let me see if we want to come tour this weekend. Well, now I get another one from you only a day later. I'm like, okay, yes, that's the people I need to schedule a tour with. It's been estimated that it can take anywhere from 7 to 12 follow-ups to close on a lease from when they first enter your nurturing system. So having something automated that can do that for you and that you're hitting really heavy in the beginning, after 30 days, people are on with their search. They've either decided where they're going or they're no longer looking. So hitting them as quickly as you can within the first week, I would say is the most vital, but definitely the first 2 weeks.
How do you make that? I mean, you mentioned automation a lot, excuse me. If you're going to automate it though, how do you make it personalized and authentic, right? I mean, a lot of people can tell, oh, this is an automatic kickback email, thank you, we got your inquiry type thing. But really, how can you stand out, make yourself, make your property a little bit different, if you would, in terms of personalizing that automation? I can't even say the word automation. How do you personalize it? How do you make yourself different?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of cool things you can do now, whether it's within your CRM system or with a drip campaign tool, whether that's Constant Contact, MailChimp, things like where you can actually edit the codes in your email to where it will say, hi, email recipient. That's what it looks like to you on your end. What it's going to do is it's going to take in and filter the information that the person has inputted into your contact form, and it's going to now personalize that message to your prospect. So now it'll say, hi, Josh, we're so glad you're interested in Main Street apartments. And then you also chose, when you were interested, what kind of bedroom you were looking for. So now it says, we love that you're interested in our 1-bedroom apartments. And then it will invite you to schedule a tour, things like that. I think look at it from the standpoint of you being in, we've talked about this in some other earlier episodes, of you being in your prospect's shoe. It's really easy to be in the marketing or the leasing shoe and say, okay, well, we need to just ask them to schedule a tour, ask them to come, all this kind of stuff. Offer different methods of what it could look like if you were looking to do. What's most important when you're trying to decide somewhere to live, especially early on, cater that to them, put their name in, include photos, include things that may state you out, include things like virtual tours or links to your site map, like things that are maybe just not, hey, we're so glad you're interested. Call us if you need anything. That's not helpful to anybody.
One thing with that, I wanted to add, so if you are sending stuff out specifically over, let's say, email, and to make it appear a little bit more authentic, one thing you can do is actually make sure the sender's name is, instead of it's just like a info at property name or just a general email address, that you actually make it from one of your on-site team members or leasing agents. So it looks like it's actually coming from somebody's name. And then also pay attention, after you have the body of your email, what does that email signature look like, right? Actually have a person's name there versus just a general community name. So so it appears a lot more authentic. And then also when it comes to email, adding some of them, what they call personalization tokens. So as Caroline mentioned, putting the first name in the subject of the email. I like doing that a lot. Putting the first name, when you're starting the email and the email body, I like doing that a lot as well. And I think that can also help just make it appear a little bit more authentic.
Absolutely. I love
Okay. Now you mentioned sitemaps and some of these different little pieces of content or things to add into your lead nurture system. What's one piece of follow-up content that is always worth sending?
Yes, my favorite, if we're assuming that you're including all the basics, you've got call us, schedule a tour, whatever. My favorite is, again, like we were saying, making it personalized and including things that that person is going to like. So whether that's photos of your 2-bedroom units, if they're looking for 2 bedrooms, or it's a link to the virtual tour of the 2 bedrooms, don't make it so they've got 17 links to choose from and they have to click through every single one to find out what they're looking for. Make it really easy and include the things that just they're looking for. If I'm interested in 2-bedroom apartments, I don't need information on your studios. That's just not, what's going to fit me. To make it very personalized and the digital asset that you include would be my recommendation.
So take a second and be smart about it. Right?
Yes.
I mean, literally smart personalization, right? I'm looking for a 2-bedroom. Send me 2-bedroom stuff, right? Don't send me 1-bedroom stuff. Don't send me 2 studio stuff. And I bet you that happens all the time. So be smart with your personalizations of your emails that are being sent out. Now, let's move forward and talk a little about converting leads into leases. Now, what kind of messaging actually moves someone from interested to ready to lease?
I think if you've got someone that is interested, you've been talking with them, you've either been on the phone with them, they've come in for a tour, they have, really looked at you guys a few times, you have some kind of personal connection to them, include those personal connections in those follow-ups and then go over questions they asked on your tour. If they said that they wanted a pet-friendly community, they came by and you learned that their dog's name was Spot, say, I hope you loved the pet park for Spot. We can't wait to see him, love his community. Make it more personalized. Maybe they said, okay, well, I want to be on the ground floor, so it's easier for me to take Spot out. And you say, hey, I know we were looking at a few different apartments. What did you think of that ground floor? Were you still interested in that first floor? Tie it back to maybe some questions they were asking so that it shows that you were caring or maybe you didn't have answers. Now you're following up and answering some of those questions or providing extra feedback. Truly just giving them the space to ask you any additional lingering questions as they move through the final phase. This might be on the pricing. This might be to new availability moving up. I know it's really easy to get in there and just constantly do these quick replies and generic things. Quick replies are very common in a lot of CRM tools. But like you said, maybe mix up texting, maybe mix up email. Choose how you're reaching out to that person and just take the time, to really think about them.
So that brings me to my next question. How can teams use urgency without being pushy?
Yes. Yeah. Because I think there is a difference versus just saying every single day, hey, Josh, you still looking? Hey, Josh, what's going on? I would say in the urgency aspect, if there's any kind of special that your community can offer, maybe that doesn't mean that you're offering 1 month free. You just don't have that capacity to do that. But maybe you can offer half off your admin fees if they lease within 24 hours. So now the person's in their head okay, well, now I'm on a time crunch. I really liked them. And that would be nice to have half off of my $200 admin fee. For the community, that's now only costed you $100, but it secured you a lease worth a lot more money.
Oh, that's a really good one. So any advice on handling cold leads or those who've gone quiet?
I think the biggest one is mixing up the communication style. I know we've talked about that a few times here, but I think it's very common if someone reaches out to you by email, we're just constantly emailing. So pick up the phone, give them a call. I know that's not always fun cold calling people, but give them a call, leave a message. You might leave a message and your emails were going to spam. They weren't even seeing them come through and they are interested. So mix up those communication methods would be my first bet. And then you can set reminders in your CRM tools. Maybe set it for a few months from now, or maybe around the same time next year. You knew they were looking at this time. Okay, well, it's been 3 months and we never heard anything from them. Let me remind them maybe, a month before they reached out to us next year to see if they're moving at that time. Doesn't mean they're lost.
What would you say is a common follow-up mistake that loses the lease?
I think not changing the names. I've seen that, and I know that sounds silly, but if it's in somebody's CRM, it says, hi, insert name here. hi. And then they don't insert the name or they don't put the things that need to be there. And then just pressing, send too quickly and not doing that. Well, now I'm like, okay, great. Either it was an automated bot that I'm getting this stuff from, or I'm like, okay, well, that person doesn't care to actually email me.
So really being generic. So you're being generic, you're going to be overlooked, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, you're competing against 20 other properties right around you who are trying to not be generic.
Makes sense. Tell me about timelines now, right? So let's say let's start with phone call first. Phone call comes into the property. This is typical, right? Phone call doesn't get answered. Person let's say the person leaves a message. How fast should a property be following up with that phone call?
I would love to just say as quickly as possible. I know that's the easiest thing for any regional manager or any, supervisor to say, but it's true. I mean, definitely within the hour, if you can, definitely within the same business day. I mean, of course, if they call after hours, you can call the next. But if you're within your business day, there's a reason they were calling you at that time when they did. That's when they're looking. That's when they had free time. And that's when they had a moment to talk. And you've got people who might be doing this on their lunch break. They might be doing it between classes. They might, they're not just out here calling people on a whim because they feel like, so try to use that time that they called you. You might miss that window of opportunity when the next person answered or called them back immediately, and get back to them as quickly as can. Even if it's just leaving them a message and then following up over email, show them that you value urgency. We can't help that we're always busy. Maybe you're on a tour, maybe something happens. But you can help how quickly you're following.
And let's move that over to email, right? Let's just say that somebody fills out some type of form on the property website. Obviously, usually there's some type of automated kickback that goes to that lead, letting them know that, hey, we got your form, or hey, we got your tour scheduled for this day. But when should the actual, leasing agent, somebody from the on-site team, when should they actually do a real personal reach out? I mean, should that be within 24 hours, 72? Or what's your thoughts there?
I like your point where you mentioned the tour part too, because that, I think, a good key indicator and difference in my eyes is, so like you said, they've reached out for general information. I say within 24 hours. I think, we do get inundated with a lot of people filling out forms or contact us. You can only do everything so quickly. I say within 24 hours is great for your first response. After a tour, immediately with following a tour. Do not wait. You are fresh on those people's minds. They just came to your community. Do not wait 24, 48 hours for a tour. I know personally a lot of people will go and tour multiple places on the same day. Don't wait 2 days from now, again, with that urgency. Email them immediately after a tour. Don't even wait the 24 hours.
Oh, good stuff. Now, let's talk about video for a second. What role does video play in actually nurturing these leads, like virtual tours or some type of clips about the property? I mean, do leasing agents even do any type of on-screen videos of themselves saying, hey, would love to have you come in, schedule a tour, tour the property? What's your thought there when it comes to video and nurturing these leads?
I love that idea you just gave, and I think it's huge. We live in a day and age now, I would say, since, 2020 COVID times where people are more likely to move around quicker. People are more likely to have remote jobs. They're more likely to relocate across the country. So there are quite a few people who are picking their apartments over the internet and over the phone with you. They don't get the chance to come ever see you in person. So they're relying a lot on all the digital assets you're going to be able to give them. And I would say, personal video of that unit could save you thousands and actually get that lease, showing them what their actual, unit is going to look like. To my leasing agents and on-site people who were there during 2020, I was during that time. And it just changed leasing drastically. You had to be very different. You're used to having that personal connection when they're coming in for a tour and talking to them and walking with them through this. But when you didn't have the ability to do that anymore, you had to adapt and you had to change. I think one of the most useful pieces is, and you can put these on your social media, we would repurpose a lot of digital videos that we were using. So we would do a walkthrough of a unit, introducing ourselves, talking a little bit about the unit or what it offered, doing a walkthrough of the unit, showing the view that you're going to get from that exact balcony that you're at. Which way is the light coming in? These are things that affect what people are going to choose and that they can't see for themselves and truly do make a difference. I would say huge, huge part. People love to view themselves in the space. I know on virtual tours now, you can even measure spaces out, so they can see where their furniture is going to fit. Does it fit a king bed in the bedroom? All sorts of things. Absolutely.
So I'd also would say that that's probably one of the big ways to build trust with a prospect before they even step foot on that property.
Yes.
Especially if you're, on site and you're actually doing a quick like video walkthrough of a unit and you're on screen as well, kind of introducing yourself, right? So they see you, they hear your voice, they see the unit. So there's rapport that's built through that, and there's an element of trust that's built through that. So yeah, I think that'd be fantastic. Now, let me ask you a question. How do I say this? Can you share an example of a leasing follow-up that really impressed you, that may be something you've seen here in the last 12 months?
I really love, I would say that's one of my favorites of seeing the actual, personally, I mean, this is my personal thing. When I was looking for apartments, we had looked at in Raleigh, it's very common just having older buildings that have what they call classic units. And then they go all the way up to like luxe renovated. And these can be anything from, changing out the carpets to planks. It could have, changing from granite to quartz, maybe cut down the countertop, like all sorts of different renovations. So while you see your unit, I remember when we came to tour in person, we saw a different type of finish and different facing unit than what we were going to actually be looking at renting. And so then it was really nice. They actually had someone move out of a unit and they went in and sent us photos of what the new one was going to look like. Now the unit was completely faced the other way. It had completely different finishes than what we had seen. And we liked the community, but it was just so nice and personable that they probably took them, 5 to 7 minutes to walk to the unit, unlock, take a few photos, come back and send it to us. But it made the world of a difference and it worked. That's where we ended up leasing. So like that, just taking those few extra minutes really does stick out to people and makes a difference.
All right, let's move into tracking and improving that lead nurture funnel. So if we're talking about tracking, what metrics or KPIs will help measure the effectiveness of your lead nurture campaign? So properties running a lead nurture campaign, how are they really measuring it, right? Obviously, leases, that's not this way, lead the leases, but overall, right, you've got a certain amount of leads that come in every single month, right? You've got, emails, text messages, phone calls that go out, you got closing ratios, what metrics or KPIs should they really be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think there's a few that I always typically looked at as a marketer for these communities is, just like you said, engagement rate. How quickly and how often are they following up with these leads? The amount of follow-ups, it would surprise you how often, people say, okay, well, I've emailed them 2 or 3 times. Now it's time to go. When we've learned it takes much more, like many more follow-ups to actually close on somebody, get them through the door. The activity type, like we were talking about earlier, mixing up that activity. If you've sent 4 emails without a respond, that's time to pick up the phone, send them a text, different things like that. And then your missed call rate and your ability of calling back. There's a lot of CRM tools who will tell you what times, your property is missing the most phone calls. So I would typically see this a lot during lunchtime, which I get, you're all taking lunch shifts, but that's also when all your prospects are lunch. So that's when they're calling the community. And so I would just remind people, make sure somebody's in the office or at least someone's by their phone, even if their door's closed and somebody else is out on a lease or on a tour, so that you have somebody by those phones. And then you can see how quickly you're calling people back to in most CRM tools. And so you can see your missed call rate and then how quickly within 24 hours that you're actually reaching back out to them and, what your percentages fall within that. So I would say quickness, type of follow-up, and how often you're following up.
Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap this episode up. But I do want to ask you one final question for our listeners today. If they're to take one thing away from this podcast, what would it be when it comes to lead nurture?
Yes, I would think our overarching concept will be to truly take your time. Take your time nurturing your leads. treat each individual lead as its own person. I know it's easier when they come in person to identify them with that, but they're still the same person when they're over the phone or over email. Take that time to truly nurture each individual lead, and it will save you a lot more marketing dollars and time in the long run.
Awesome. Great advice. And also think about sense of urgency as well. I know we saying take your time.
Yeah.
Sense of urgency. You do have to have a sense of urgency, right? Somebody calls property.
100%.
You need to get back to them that day if you can, right? You really do.
Don't take your time doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a real big one. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and I appreciate everybody listening today to the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your team. We will be back next week with a brand new episode, so we will see you then. Thanks a lot, Caroline.